Are you tired of spending your time and money chasing strategy after strategy only to discover what worked 10, 5, or even 2 years ago is not working now? Things shift fast in the online space, and if you're not keeping up, you're getting left behind. It's time for something different. Welcome to the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast, where every single episode will be jam-packed with proven, profitable strategies, behind-the-scenes secrets, and what's working now resources from industry experts and global influencers to help you scale your business, shorten your learning curve, and stand out in a crowded, noisy marketplace. And now, your host, award-winning marketing and media strategist, and international speaker, Patty Farmer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast. I'm your host, Patty Farmer, and I'm looking forward to sharing today's industry expert with you. We have a special guest today, and we have a special topic, too, because we're going to be talking about something that is kind of near and dear to my heart, and I think there's a lot of people out there, it might be to theirs as well. What we're going to talk about today is having a business that is multi-generational and also being a women-owned minority business. And I know that encompasses a lot. And right now, it's a topic that everybody is talking about. And I want to introduce you to somebody who is doing it so successfully that I just had to bring her on so she could share it with you. Maybe some tips that might help you to navigate it a little bit better, but is sure going to inspire you if nothing else. So let me tell you a little bit about her. So Theresa Ream is president of the Ream Companies. She's an entrepreneur and business owner of multiple women-owned minority businesses that are multi-generational as well. Theresa started her first business with nothing but some construction knowledge and a desire to help her community in their times of need. Now, 40 years later, Theresa has a small empire of businesses ranging from a high-end retail cabinet store and design center, a Flooring America flooring store, and a large and prestigious restoration company. And when she's not doing all of that, she's also the 2021 president of the Professional Women's Network of the Monterey Peninsula. We call that PWN. And she is a fierce supporter of women in business, as well as a force of nature in her local community where she serves year-round in a multiple of ways. So Theresa, thank you so much for being here with me today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Patty.
Oh, I just don't even know where to dive in, but I have to tell you, just thinking about 40 years later, I mean, that is like so amazing, right? 40 years, and that you have been 40 years alongside your husband, who's vice president, which I love too, right? So let's kind of start there. I think a lot of times that journey, and you gave us a little bit where you said you started your first business with nothing but some construction knowledge. Let's kind of talk a little bit about that and about the companies that you do own, and then we can dive in deeper about that. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, I always wanted to have my own business, and we started out in construction, which was just a lot of, it was a really good niche we were in because we really got to help our community. We did rehab work for the elderly people in our community through the cities, the different cities in our area. So that was very rewarding. And we just basically got into the restoration business by kind of a weird circumstance.
I think a lot of times that is how we get involved in things, right? Like, I mean,
Yes.
I always think to myself, and I ask my guests this a lot of times too, it's not like we wake up and think, oh, this is what I'm going to do with my life, right? You know, it's always a kind of a meandering, winding road that gets us to where we're going. But I know that this year you're celebrating 40 years. It's like an anniversary, which that's pretty impressive. And I have to say, it's not just impressive to have a 40-year anniversary for a business, but to be building that business alongside your spouse and to still be happily married too. I mean, combining both those things. And, you know, I've seen you and Terry together. So, I mean, I have to tell you, building something that's important. I think it's the difference between building a business and building a legacy.
Yes, absolutely. And, going back around to how we kind of changed overnight, it was through a drunk driver running into our house in the middle of the night. So it did change very drastically because an adjuster from the insurance came out the next day and asked me what kind of business we had. And I told him construction. And he said, "Do you do restoration?" I said, "Absolutely." And which we didn't. And he asked me if we had a computer. Well, this was the 80s. And I said, "Absolutely." And the next day he called to go look at a job, and off we were running in the restoration industry.
That's hilarious. But I think a lot of times that is, right? I mean, when you think about it, I think a lot of times in business, we think about who we want to work with and we think about what we want to do. But a lot of times people ask us, "Can you do this? Can you do that?" And I have always said in my business that every single thing that led me to the next step came from somebody who was either already my client or potentially my client that said, "Oh, you know what, Patty, it'd be great if you did this." Oh, okay, right.
Yes.
They'll tell you. Sometimes you have to ask.
Yes, sometimes you have to ask, and sometimes you have to jump into both with both feet with no idea of what you're doing. And an example of that is when we did start the mitigation side of our restoration, which is the contents, everything inside your house, restoring that. I went out and marketed agents and adjusters, and we did get our first call from a fire down in Pebble Beach, and it was a 7,000 square foot home. And they said, "You need to pack it out." And we're like, "Oh, yes, of course." Well, we didn't have a warehouse to pack it out to. So we packed it out to warehouse location 1 and 2, which was my house and my garage. And the next day, and we're cleaning all the smoke damaged items. And the next day I went out and we got our warehouse, our first warehouse.
I think that what's really inspiring about that, though, is, there's a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners that will use an excuse and say, "Oh, well, because I'm not this or that, or I don't have this or I don't have that, that's why I'm not successful. That's why I can't build my business." And, I get it. Sometimes it is kind of hard to see past that. But the reality is you need to a lot of times jump in. I mean, I know this happened to me plenty of times in my business, right? One time my husband told me that when he was younger, this before me, when he was younger, he used to get all these jobs, about how to build cabinets and how to do this and how to do that. And he'd get a job and then he'd go spend 2 days at the library and and learn how to do it, right? And stuff. I mean, he didn't own the company. It was a job, but he was like, "I learned how to do a lot of things by just being able to do that." And I think, now we don't have to go to the library, right? We have Google, right? And we have YouTube. And so we can learn to do a lot of things. Every time I need to do something and my husband's not home, I'll, text my husband. He's like, "Honey, look at YouTube." Now I'm just like trained. Oh, that's right. Before I call you, I should look at YouTube and see if I can figure it out myself, right? So there's a lot of different ways, but 40 years ago, right? So I think that is kind of really interesting. So tell us a little bit about each one of your businesses. So you have 3 companies right now, and they do kind of go hand in hand, right? But yet they're distinctly different too. So tell us a little bit about them.
Yes. Well, Disaster Kleenup Specialists has a lot of different divisions. It has the construction division. It has the asbestos and lead division and hazardous bio waste. We also do trauma cleanup. We also have the fire division and the water division. So those all work hand in hand. So if, say you have a fire, we go in with the water division. If say you have a water, we go in with the water division and mitigate that damage. And then the construction company will come in and rebuild.
Oh, well, that works. That is a lot of different things. I mean, that's almost a multitude of companies right in there. And then what about the other 2 companies?
Well, and then also we might not need to go in and do some asbestos abatement also. So there's all kinds of things that go together with that. And then the flooring company will come in and do the flooring, and the cabinet company will come in and do the cabinets and also design different areas of your house too.
This kind of reminds me of when you paint your walls, and when you paint your walls, you're like, "Oh, now I need new curtains." And then when you get new curtains, you're like, "Oh, now I need," right? So each one of them, right? So do each one of those businesses stand alone as well, but yet
Yes.
certainly can refer business to each other.
Yes. And so anything that can go wrong with the house, we can repair. Anything that people want to update in their home, we can do. So it's kind of nice.
I love that. So let's go thinking back to when you first started, right? Or at least back some ways. If
Yes.
you could go back and talk to yourself back then, what would you tell yourself to do first?
Well, one of the things that I really realize now, it's about relationships. And so within the daily grind of really working things out in a new business, I would have built relationships right off the bat. Now, we did that in a lot of forms and fashions, but I would have really taken it to the next level too.
I think that makes sense.
Public speaking also.
Oh, well, there you go. I think a lot of times when we have a business, we tend to build relationships with the people that are like, one level or one degree right around us, right?
Yes.
And that's what we think. And, back in those days, really, and still sometimes now, I know that people think, oh, how do you get business? Oh, word of mouth. Well, we all know that really is true. But we live in a global world now where word of mouse is just as important as word of mouth, right? And so I think that how we build relationships is a little bit different. And the capacity to be able to get referrals and introductions from people all over, because even though you live in California, I live in Dallas, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is, I know a lot of people in California, right? So you can do a lot of business and get a lot of referrals, building relationships, not just with the people in your local community. I know for me, I have clients all over the world. I serve in my local community because it's really, really important to me. And I know that you do as well. So let's kind of touch on that a little bit. We can circle back around. But I know that you do serve your community in a lot of ways. And I have to tell you, I didn't say this in your intro because I would have been talking about you a lot. But I have to just say, just listen to some of the ways that she has served and some of the awards that she has gotten from doing that. So she's a certified minority women-owned business proprietor and the recipient of the KSBW television news station Union Bank Best Women-Owned Business in Monterey, the Best Minority-Owned Business in Monterey. She's also a recipient of the Professional Women's Network Woman of the Year Award, the Monterey Chamber of Commerce Best Service Business Award, and the Monterey Chamber Best Retail Store Award. So that's quite a bit of service that you have done. So congratulations on that. And I believe that you just recently got nominated for another award. What is that?
That is the award for Women in Restoration. So I'm looking forward to possibly flying back to Florida and being a part of that. Even if I don't win it, I want to meet the people
and support them. I mean, how many women in restoration? I mean, I'm sure like in itself, that is a minority in itself, right? I mean, how many of them can there be? So that's kind of exciting. When I looked it up, when you told me that, I mean, there's a lot more than you think, right? Because I'm sure people probably don't think. So I think that is exciting, and congratulations on being nominated. And that's an achievement in itself. And I hope that you win this one as well. But I mean, surely with all the things that you have done, you have definitely been able to serve in your local community. And when I Googled you, because we could do that right now we can do so much. I mean, I've been hearing all about murals and, other ways that you've served, all kinds of things that you've been a part of in Sand City and the surrounding area. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Sand City's a cool little area. It's a strip of mostly industrial and artists right next to the Monterey Bay. It sits right on the beach next to Monterey Bay. And it's got festivals and all kinds of great things going on, very artsy. And so we have artists come and paint these huge murals on the side of our warehouses. We now have 2 large warehouses that have different sides that they can paint on and stuff. So it's really nice being involved in that part. We also have the Youth Art Council comes out and we let them set up when they do have the festivals out there. So that gives them exposure too.
I love that. I love the way that you serve your community. And I feel like when we serve our community, that does always come back, right? I mean, and it makes us feel good too, right? So I really love that. So now let's go back to that multi-generational story we were talking about in the beginning. So how many people in your family are now part of your company, and what are the roles they play?
Well, of course, there's my husband and I, and then our son is a high-end kitchen designer. Our daughter is the COO, and she runs a big portion of our company as far as production-wise. And then we also have my son-in-law, Cody, who is a construction estimator. Sadly, we lost our daughter-in-law, who was our marketing director. So it's great. We've had different family members, of course, come in and out of the business, but we are the mainstay.
So let's kind of talk about a family business dynamic, right? That has to be a whole dynamic of trying to have a flourishing business and, really understanding how to keep the business separate than personal. And surely there must be some tips you can give us on how to have a family business where that keeps the family intact and knows the boundaries, right? Because it's got to really be about boundaries.
Yes, it's mainly about knowing your roles. And actually, before you actually have the roles, you have to identify your strengths and weaknesses. When people get together in their family business, they sometimes overlook this. They overlook exactly what they're good at. They try to do everything. They step over each other's boundaries. And I believe that's what breaks it apart. They get emotional. They don't go by facts like they would with maybe other people that they'd be working with besides family. And so knowing the personalities and where they best fit in, and then defining clear roles on that and staying in your lane really helps things, because that's where most family business warfare comes from.
I actually agree with that. I've done several things, and I partner with my daughter a lot in different things that we have done. And I think that the one thing that we really had to really work on, we finally nailed it, but we kind of struggled in the beginning a little bit, stepping on each other's toes, before we realized that it wasn't just defining what each other's roles were. It was recognizing that somebody has to make a decision. And so for us, what it was is we can discuss it, but ultimately, whoever was in charge of that role had to make the decision. And if it didn't go your way, if what didn't go your way, you had to be able to suck that up, so to speak, right? And be able to know that that is what you would want to happen if it was the other way, right? So sometimes you just have to know that, yes, we do discuss it because we are in business together, right? But sometimes you don't agree and somebody has to make a decision. So getting really clear, I feel like not just the roles, but who's the decision maker if everybody doesn't agree, right?
Yes, absolutely, because that can put a really big cog in your wheel if it's holding you up. And that moves on to employees also. You have to give them the power to make decisions on different things. You have to train them and coach them right and hire the right people and then let them make the decisions. Now, a lot of times it might be a bad decision and you just got to roll with it. My husband has a saying that I've lived through this mistake about 250 times. With different employees. So you have to let people make the decisions, make the mistakes, learn from it, as long as it's in a good spirit of doing it, not as them being sneaky about something or having their own self-interest in mind. But if it's a clear, honest mistake, and sometimes that's the best learning experience is your mistakes.
I kind of feel like nobody ever goes through anything where we're not going to make mistakes. It's not like if you make a mistake, it's when you make a mistake, right? Because we're all going to drop the ball. I always tell my team, and they're not related to me, but I tell them all the time from day one, right? You will drop the ball. And just so you know, you will never, ever lose your job or get in trouble for that. As long as you own it and accept responsibility, and all I care about is what's the solution. I just want you to be able to come to me and say, okay, I dropped the ball. This is what happened. These are some of the options of what a solution could be, right? I just don't want, what I don't want is I don't want somebody to say, well, the reason why this happens is because she didn't do this, and then you try to throw somebody else under the bus, right? Like that's unacceptable to me. Now I have to tell you, and that's not even with family. I would really have a problem with it if it was family, right? But so do you find as the president, how do you not take it home, right? Your husband is vice president, your daughter's COO. You just did this. So when you guys are around the dinner table or when they come over and you have family over, how do you separate it and how do you not take it home?
Well, it was by mistake and error of doing it and having the big family blow-ups around the Thanksgiving table and, doing everything wrong, actually, and just learning from it and coming to the point where when we're home, we shouldn't discuss too much business. Now, it's going to happen, and there's going to be a lot of different sidebars, like we'll listen to different podcasts with my grandson to train him up in business ways. So we do work on the business constantly without actually talking about it. And that's really important to do. I feel like I'm always working and on vacation every day because I have fun every day. I do fun things. I take care of myself. And then I do the fun business things. I do the not so fun business things. But they're all kind of mixed up into one day. So it's an exciting way for me to live. I enjoy that. I know it's not for everybody, but that's one thing that I enjoy. But you learn not to debate every single business item when you're at home and you're in your personal time.
I think that's really important because, the reality is, my husband and I aren't in business together. And, I talk about my business. He talks about his business, right? And we talk about him. I have to even say, it's kind of a funny thing, but I even say that there are times that I coach my husband. Sometimes he's an engineer, right? So he kind of thinks like that, right? Yes. And so occasionally he'll tell me about something and I have to nicely kind of coach him on how he could handle that better in a very, very nice way. And sometimes I have to just be like, Patty, like you just need to let this go. But I do remember early on, there were one time in particular, I remember when I was saying something to him about how he could have handled it better. And he looked at me and said, you do know I don't work for you, right, honey? and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. And so now I remember that, right? And so now I know to say, I've had to deal with that a few times. Would you like me to tell you some of the ways that have worked really, really well for me? And sometimes he says yes, and sometimes he says no. And so I find that one of the ways, and like I said, we don't work together, is that you ask and you don't offer unless they actually want to receive, right? And I think that is something.
You're a very strong woman, and I noticed that a lot of strong women have great relationships with their husbands. They learn where to turn it on and turn it off. And usually a really strong woman is, for the most part, nice about going about her business. She's not mean or witchy. And I enjoy very strong women. That's one reason I really enjoy you, Patty, is because you get to watch their strengths out in the world, and then you get to see their softness in different areas where they need to be soft.
Well, I think that because we love to serve, right? So I think that, there's always the reasons why we do business and if you're happy. But one of the things that you said early on that I loved, which is about doing fun things every day, I think that the sooner in somebody's business, whether they're in business with family or not, just in general, I think that for me, I only do things in my business that bring me joy. Like that is my hands down thing. Does this bring me joy? If it doesn't bring me joy, sometimes it still has to be done in my business, but it doesn't mean it has to be done by me. Right? So if it has to be done and it's something that I really don't, I'm going to tell you, when people try to do the things that they don't like, they don't get done very well usually, or they're the last thing to get done. So I find that I like to work in my brilliance and I hire people to work in their brilliance. And it seems like it works really well. And I could see where if you were working with family, that would be like even more important.
Yes, absolutely. Because in family, we tend to kind of just throw everything at each other. We wear all these hats and it gets really blurred and people start doing bad jobs within things. And have you ever heard about a Peter principle?
Yes.
Yeah, and we tend to do a lot of that with family members, and it kind of wrecks things. And the Peter principle is being promoted past your competency. And so just because someone's doing a great job at something, we're like, oh, we should make them vice president of this. And then they get over there and they clamor around in it. And it's because we've had that Peter principle that we've done it. So really noticing what people do. For many years, I did all the bookkeeping, and that's not my personality. I'm a...
What a surprise.
Yes, and I plugged along in it for many, many, many years, probably 25 years, just, doing it. And so when I gave that over and I was free to do the marketing and the different things that I like, the legal part of it, delving into that, it just was so much better for everyone.
Here's my question. When you let go of it, were you able to let go of controlling it too? Because sometimes people can let go, but they can't let go of the control, right?
Yes. I'm pretty good about training someone and then letting them do their job in their own parameters, how they like to do it. I don't like to squelch people because I'm a pretty free spirit. And so the thought of, thumbs down on someone's neck is real unappealing to me. So did I let go? I felt, this is kind of going to sound weird, but I felt that you never let go of control of the money part of the business.
There you go.
Because you are top dog if you are in control of the money part of it.
Well, because it controls everybody else's life too, right?
Yes. So the bookkeeping and the tasks and all the tedious things, I have a wonderful office administrator that takes care of all that. And then I can control it from a different level.
That makes a lot of sense, though, when you really think about it, right? So in this journey of 3 businesses, right, and having family and having them have different roles and doing all these different things and balancing, having fun and doing all these things too, what would you say was the biggest obstacle or a blind spot or a roadblock? A lot of times it's us that get in our way whenever we're stuck with anything. What would you say? People always love to hear about that because they think a lot of times when they see people who are successful at business that they never go through anything they're going through, right? So I always like to share that, we all go through this stuff. We didn't just wake up and, we nailed it right away, right? So what was something that stood in your way that you had to get past?
Well, one of the things I had to get past was I wanted to build the business bigger. So how do you do that when basically Terry and I started out with no money at all? Zilch. So how do you do that? And that was one of the biggest obstacles, was growing the business to the level that we wanted to. And by meaning the level we wanted to, knowing all the technology and training that go along with mitigation and the insurance work, and then training our employees. So the obstacle was, doing the work, getting the money, then putting it right back into the training and the equipment. That was a big obstacle because it's a lot of sacrifice for many, many years that you have to go through. You want to go out like some businesses and buy the boats the first 2 years that you're in business. But we saw many businesses do that. And we always told ourselves, we're not going to be the people that buy the boats the first 2 years we're in business. We're going to put it all back in. And that's what we do to this day. We put a large amount of it in. So the obstacle was getting everybody highly trained. And then to this day, we have the most highly trained crew that I can think of.
I think that's really, really important because a lot of times people like instant gratification, right? And they especially like it when they're in business for themselves too. And I find that the biggest instant gratification that I see when people hire me and we're looking at their books and why their business isn't where they want it to be, isn't always where they spend their money. It's also where they spend their time, right? They think, oh, that's right, I'm my own boss and I'm self-employed, and that means I can not work whenever I feel like it, right? And I kind of have always felt that as an entrepreneur, I was giving myself permission to work harder than I did even when I had a job, right? Stuff though, especially early on, right? Then, now I don't work on Fridays and I don't take clients on Mondays. I work on the business, in the business on Mondays. But, when you think about it, you had to learn to do that. I didn't get to do it right from day one. I've been in business in 25 plus years, not 40, but 25 plus years. And you really don't get to do that right away. And a lot of times people are like, oh, it's kind of like when summer comes. I find like a lot of women, they're like, oh, well, my kids are home. And when they had a job, they would have had to figure out what to do with their kids, right? But they think that because they're self-employed, they don't. Now, I do love that if you build your business right, you can build that into your business, but probably not from day one, right? So there's times that you have to think about what those things were. I mean, when my kids were little and I had a business, I can remember building my business while my kids were in a playpen in my office.
Yes, we had our children the same time we started our business. So it was raise them and raise the business. So yes, it's funny that you mentioned that about working hard, especially in the early stages of your business, because like I said, we listened to things with my grandson Cash, who we're raising. And, he was talking about Elon Musk, that he worked an ungodly amount of hours. He worked 100 hours a week. And then he always said, well, I bypassed everybody because in 4 months, I did what normal people do, working 40 hours a week in 4 months. So he was 4 months and everybody else was a year to take what he did. And then also Will Smith was on there, and Will Smith said he didn't really feel he had talent. He just worked really hard at his craft. And again, hours that he said would make your face fall off. And so, yes, you have to get in there and roll up your sleeves and really go for it, especially in the beginnings. And those beginnings,
I think we make decisions and we make choices, right? We always make choices. You know what I love that I'm hearing you say with your grandchild, that this multi-generational business that you have, that you're taking it down and continuing to take it down to the next generation, which I think is really a great thing, right? And I think that, if you listen to people and you ask them, what would you love to have for your business? I think a lot of people would love to have that. I know for me, I say all the time when people talk about legacy, I'm the name of my company. And while I have a team of people that work for me, my children don't work for me. And the day I die, my business is pretty much almost closed because there isn't anybody to come step in and run my business, right? I mean, my husband will be able to sell my business probably, right? But when you think about it though, the reality is nowadays, if you can do that, if there is a way for you to build your business and make it a legacy, bringing in your family and teaching them, I mean, just think of all of the lessons that you get to, we think of all the things we want to teach our children and our grandchildren. And bringing them into the business and having them learn from the ground up has to be like an amazing accomplishment, but something that you can enjoy and take pride in, right?
Yes.
And then not only that, but they get to appreciate you because, when kids get to be teenagers, they don't always think their parents are all that smart, right? And they find out, wow, my parents really are smart.
I know just last week, my little grandson said, yes, I am going to be working in the family business, right? When I grow up. And I said, well, no, you won't be when you're grown up. You'll probably in the next year, you'll be working within the business. So you can kind of get trained on different things. And he said, well, what am I going to be, Grandma, when I do? Am I going to take over the business someday? And I said, yes, possibly. And what you're going to be is what your strengths are. And then as we find out what your strengths are, you can train to that, whether it's college or technical or both, whatever that is, you train to that. And that's what you'll be within the company if that's what you choose to do. So he was really excited about
that. No, I think I love that. I really do. So I have a question. I'm just kind of finding it interesting. You serve as such a strong, fierce supporter of women. I really love that. Do you have a huge percentage of women who work for you?
Yes, we have a lot of women that work for us and a lot of women in management. I don't know what happened, but as they come through the ranks, we have upper management has a lot of women in it.
Go you. I love that, Theresa. I really, really do. I think that it is really good. And in a time where we are right now, I think it is really important, not just for women-owned businesses, but women-owned minority businesses. I mean, I think right now, there's a lot of conversation about diversity and a lot of things that are happening. And I feel like the glass ceiling, when people say that, I was like, why does there even have to be one? Like, break that ceiling. It's like when people come to me and say, oh, Patty, I want out of the box thinking for marketing. And I'm like, why is there even a box? Like, let's kick the box to the curb. Like, I think we're conditioned to think there needs to be that, but I don't think there ever needs to be that anymore. We live in a time where you can do anything that you want to do if you're willing to do the work, right? And not only that, but we have a time now where you can get the information. There was a time where you used to not be able to get the information you need. Now we have that capability too. So being able to bring in family, and really, I love what you're saying about the strengths. I think that's really, really awesome. So let's shift that a little bit and let's talk about PWN. Okay. So I love that, a lot of people talk about pivoting during the pandemic, but I love that your PWN was and is started in California, but now we have expanded nationally. So I remember that when you first told me about it, I asked you, I said, Theresa, can I ask you a question? Is it that you are virtual or are you national? Because they're not the same thing, right? So is it just that because of the pandemic, you guys are just running your California business, the California business virtually, or are you actually expanding it nationally? And I loved your answer. And I love that it is expanding more and more. And I actually love that I don't live in California now. I get to be a part of PWN on a national level. So that's kind of exciting. But I love your vision for you're an amazing president because you have this vision for having run these multiple businesses and the different roles and accepting people where they are and helping guide them to growth, to work in their strengths, that now you get to have that ability to be able to do it in your community as well. So tell us about that and what made you decide to step up into that? Because stepping up to be a president of that company that was going to go national and all that while you're running those other companies, I'm sure, that wasn't easy either.
No, it's just like everything else in my life. It just kind of presents itself to me in very strange ways. I was the president in 2006 and 2008. I was the first woman in the Professional Women's Network to be the president twice. And now I'm on my fourth term. So I kind of, I was opening up a business in San Jose. So I kind of pulled back in 2011, back from the Professional Women's Network and hadn't been there for a long time until 2019, when a customer just happened to come in and say, your wife, we used to really enjoy her at PWN. Why doesn't she come anymore? And my husband said, you got to get back to that. You really love that organization. And I said, yes, I do. So I contacted the current board back in 2019, and they said, we're kind of in trouble. We're down to 40 members, and we don't have anybody running for president or any of the treasurer, the executive part of the board. And so, can you be our president? And I'm like, oh, no. I'm not interested in that. I'm good with finances. Let me be your treasurer. And they said, no, you don't understand. If no one runs, we won't be able to carry on. And so I said, what the heck? Okay, let's do it. And so I showed up at the mixer where everybody votes for their incoming board. And people were like looking at me like, who is she? And she's running for president. She's the only one on the slate. And she has no executive board running. And suddenly 3 women rose that knew me from previously, and they'll say, Marion Gallantly, she said, I'll be your vice president and I'll be your secretary. And someone said, and I'll be your treasurer. And we all stood up and I introduced myself and everyone voted. And my first mentors that welcomed me into PWN 24 years ago swore me in right there. And it was just this amazing swept by force into the Professional Women's Network at that level again. And
that was in 2019?
Yes, that was because in 2019, the end of 2019.
And you're still the president.
Yes. And so they were voting us in for 2020. And so we had all this great stuff planned that we were doing and mixers and really a lot of exposure for our members. I was getting together, and then the pandemic hit and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing now? We can't do anything. We were all local at that point, all Monterey area. And then I thought, we're carrying on. I contacted some of the other organizations and we're not doing anything. We're just shutting it down. And I thought, okay, they're going to shut it down. We're going for it. And we started with 3 Zooms, educational Zooms a month. And of course, we can get some great speakers all over the United States and Canada on Zoom. They don't have to fly in and do all this preparation. So we just started really meeting people all over the United States. And of course, they joined like you did. And it's just an amazing journey.
I really love that because, Gina Estrada, who was your speaker coordinator and a very, very good friend of mine. And it's really kind of funny because she had been telling me about PWN for, I don't know, probably a year before I joined. And she kept telling me I should do it. And I was like, I was busy at that time. I was involved in other things. And I don't know why I didn't do it, because usually when Gina tells me to do something, I usually do it. And it wasn't until we found out that Gina had cancer that I really realized that I should pay attention. And she said to me, she booked me to come speak for you guys. And then I really got excited, but she wanted me to join. And that was really before you guys had decided to really, really go national. And so I was like, Once you did though, and then Gina introduced me to you, I was like, okay, so once I saw your vision for it, then it was like, okay, so I could align with what that vision is. And so Gina got to see me join and know that I joined, but then we lost her and she lost her fight with cancer, which was so sad. And I feel so sad now sometimes because, she's our Woman of the Year this year. And I mean, I love her and she was my friend for such a long time. And now I feel like, I didn't get to be on any committees with her or any of that stuff though, but I kind of feel like she's always like there, and I can kind of feel her knowing that she's really happy to say, I'm not there anymore, Patty, but I'm really glad you are and stuff. And so she brought us together anyway, right? And so I love that. But I've always been impressed with how you have done all those things. I mean, you know what? I am a strong woman and, I have 6 daughters, so I get it. But really, they say if you want something done, ask a busy woman, right? But having those companies and serving your community, you have a good heart and, you have a good spirit, right? And you're very loving and caring, and that really aligns with me. And you really do have a heart to serve. So really, having a women-owned business, really honestly, your heart is there for that. And I absolutely love that. And, to be successful, I think that is really important. So, success means different things to different people. So with all of these things that you've done, how you serve your community, how you have multiple businesses and your family is a part of them, and all of these different things, for you, what is success to you?
Success is seeing what my husband and I first started out building the company come in fruition. And that is building up individual people. And that's how we started. We took the most unlikely people and we groomed them, we taught them, we sent them to specialized training. And now some of them they're up in upper management. And if they're not working for us, they're working for national insurance companies now. We always thought that if you kind of altruistic, yes, mission statement is build the individual. And when you do that, you strengthen the family. And when you do that, you strengthen the community. And ultimately, you make the world a better place.
That is so wonderful. I love that. I think it is really, really important. I know for me that every time anything that has happened in my business, I just really, really believe that it's never about us, right? It's always about the people that we serve. It's always about the relationships that we build, right? I feel like relationships are the currency in today's business environment, right? So I always like to say, how fat is your wallet, right? If you're, want a fat wallet and you're thinking money,
Yes.
people are always more important than money. You can always make more money. If you're willing to do the work, you can always make more money. The people that you get to serve alongside with and listening to people's dreams. I always say that my superpower is I can listen to somebody, tell me their dream and listen to them for like 5 minutes. And then in my mind, I'm already thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like you're sitting on $1 million. Like I can help you get there, right?
You're so good at that, Patty.
Because so like monetization, but with that said, people are like, oh, Patty, like, is it really all about monetizing you? And I'm like, no, what's really great about it is there's things that we want to do that just feed our soul. We're never going to make us money. And that's okay, right? Those things bring us joy. They feed our soul. What I think is just important though, is when you're in business and you have a business, when you are doing revenue generating things, they need to generate revenue so that way you can have more time that you get to do the things that feed your soul, right? And I feel like when you talk to other people, and I think it's because I have 6 daughters and I come from a family with 5 girls, right? So I love women, and I have always just made it my mission that I believe that every woman who wants to have a business, if she wants to have a business, she's willing to do the work. I will do every single thing in my power I can to help her to achieve that, right?
Yes.
Because I think that the difference sometimes between women and men is that for a woman, if she has a business, right? But then all of a sudden, it's like she doesn't get to go to Johnny's soccer games and stuff. All of a sudden, she's thinking to herself, maybe I should just go back and get a job, right? But a man doesn't think that because we expect a man to work and miss things and all that kind of stuff. But for women, right? I mean, it's changing. We're not there yet, but it is changing and stuff though. But for me, there's always a way. Like, so I really feel like if you want a business, I don't want a woman to have to feel like she has to go back and get a job. There's nothing wrong with having a job. And, sometimes people, that's just what they want to do. And they're just going to be the best at that job they can and be happy in that job, have the right job where you can be happy. That's great. But if you do want to have a business, right, then pick a business that allows you to have the things that you want and give it all you got. And I love that what you said in the beginning was, you don't get to open up a business and say, oh, we're going to take Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off, and we're going to buy a boat, and we're only going to work, 6 hours a day. I mean, like, it sounds good, but it really doesn't work that way.
Not at all.
But if you can see the big picture, and what I think that I hear from you is that what you're saying is that you and Terry together were able to see the big picture, and then you either brought your family in or hired the right people to make that happen and to break it down into bite-sized pieces so that the right people were in the right vehicle to make it happen, and you built them up. And that's why you have a life filled with joy, and the people who work for you love working for you too. And that is super, super special.
Yes, that is success.
Absolutely, right? And I just love that. So Theresa, let's kind of sort of wrap it up with this. What is next for you? So what are things that you're looking for that maybe you've been thinking about, you haven't implemented yet? Maybe those are, I always say, a lot of times people talk about, squirrel and having shiny object syndrome. I don't have shiny object syndrome. I have brilliant idea syndrome.
I love that.
So that's what I say. I have brilliant idea syndrome. And so I have a place where I put them. So what is that for you? What are some next things that you'd like to see, whether it's for PWN, whether for your business, whether for your family? What are some things you have for the future that you would love to see happen?
Well, next things for me is I got the opportunity to be a mother again. I got my grandson when his mom passed away when he was 6. He's now going to be 10. And that's a lot of my and Terry's next thing is growing up this young man. Another thing, I really, really enjoy the professionalness network. I enjoy leading an organization, of meeting the women, of interacting with the women and making them better in some way. And so I will just have to figure out how I can keep that going, with what that looks like in keeping in the networking business.
Well, because we know that relationships in everything that we do matter, right? In every single way. in everything we do. And so I have to tell you, it is very apparent that you have done that and that you understand it and that you implement that. And so I think that you are a shining example for your team, for your community, for your family, right? I mean, has anybody called you a matriarch yet? Are you the matriarch of the family yet? But
I think I've been kind of matriarchal since I was 10.
I love that.
My husband always says, you're very motherly. So I am a nurturing person. I enjoy that.
I think it's important too. Like, I know one of the things for me when people wonder what it's like to work with me, sometimes I'm like, well, first of all, you just have to know that I am going to hold your feet to the fire. Like, I am going to make you be accountable, because I can't help you to monetize your business if you don't. However, I am going to be very loving while I'm doing it. So it's kind of like one of my clients told me once that working with me was like at the intersection of, they felt like they were working with a business coach, a marketing director, and a social worker. Because they said they never met anybody who could hug with them, shed tears with them if they wanted to cry, but then pull them back up, whatever. Yeah. And I think that's okay, right? I don't know if I was supposed to I took that good. I was like, oh, I'll take that. I love that, right? But it is about the people we surround ourselves with, right? And I think that is really important. So, Theresa, this is the Marketing, Media, and Money podcast, right? So this is the portion of the show where I like to call it the open mic portion, right? Where I hand the mic over to you. So what would you say? I mean, you've given us so many nuggets and really some insights in inspiration even to what it is like to have a family, and whether that family is blood or whether you have just built a family in your business with people that really are not related to you. That's okay too. You've really given us some inspiration in that, but what would you say is the number one marketing, media, money strategy?
A lot of businesses fail because they do not have their goals written, their job descriptions written with clear roles for their people, and especially important for family members, where you can kind of step all over each other. Have those clear roles written out and have systems within your business set up so you can duplicate easily. That's how we have so many teams. We have 10 teams within our businesses, and those teams can be anywhere from 3 to 15 people. So it's all systematized, and you can duplicate easier that way.
I think you can grow faster that way too. I think that really, really works. I think the sooner we get people to understand the vision so that they get on board with the vision, then they buy into the vision, whether or not they are an owner or not.
Yes, and it's easier for them. It's easy for them to follow clear guidelines, and they don't have to guess what they're supposed to be doing. And it's comforting to them. Now, that's not that they're glued to that and they have to stick to certain things by the book. They're able to do it within their own parameters, but they know where they stand at all times.
No, I agree with that. I don't like to micromanage. When people work for me, I'm like, I just have a deadline. And as long as you get it done by the deadline, I don't care if you work early in the morning, the middle of the, it doesn't matter to me. Like, whatever you need to do, as long as you meet the deadline to me, right? That's all that matters to me. And I think that allowing people to work the best way that it works for them makes a lot of sense to me. Happy employees are a happier company, right? And it's like one big family, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense. So I really love that. So Theresa, you have given us such great information, and I am sure my audience is going to want to connect with you. So what's the easiest way for them to connect with you?
Well, you can look me up, Theresa Ream, on LinkedIn or Facebook.
And then just so that you know, in the show notes, we talked about how she has all these companies and all these different things that she's a part of. We're going to have all the links, just look below, and the links to all these things. So if there was a specific something she talked about that kind of stood out for you, or you want to check out PWN, maybe, you are just somewhere in the world and you're thinking, wow, I would really love to be a part of that. Come check us out. We would love to have you come visit us. So that's great. So all of those links are below. So make sure that you check them out and reach out to Theresa and stuff. So thank you so much, Theresa, for being here with me and for being so open and really kind of letting us come in a little bit to see what it's like to be inside of a family that has multiple companies and what all the roles are. So I really appreciate you sharing with us.
And thank you for the opportunity, Patty. You are my kind of people. I am drawn to people exactly like you, mainly women, and it's just always a pleasure to interact with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to take this moment to thank our sponsor, the Exacta Corporation, who is the developer of the Family Organizer Plus platform. And for more information, you can check them out at exactacorp.com. And so one last thing, if you have been thinking to yourself, what is an answer to the question, where should I focus my time and energy to attract high qualified, ideal clients? Then we'd like to have you take our Marketing Media Money assessment. And in 3 minutes or less, you will know where you're excelling, where you can make a few changes, and what steps to take to achieve massive results. So just go to www.M3, that stands for Marketing Media Money. So M3BizQuiz.com. So just go there. It'll help you a little bit no matter what. It always makes you feel good to know where you are in your business. We want to thank you for joining us here on the Marketing Media Money podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, and I'm sure you did, please subscribe and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. And last but not least, please make it a phenomenal day. And remember, if your day today is not phenomenal, you have the power to change it.
Thank you for joining us today on the Marketing, Media, and Money podcast. To shorten your learning curve even more, make sure to grab your free copy of the Marketing, Media, and Money magazine at www.marketingmediamoney.com. I promise your business will thank you.